This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to do a Smackdown comparison between two Sony Haswell products. Right here we have the Sony VAIO Pro 13 in beautiful carbon black, and here we have the Sony VAIO Duo in white, which is really silver. Both of them are available in black and white, but beyond that, there's some differences. We're going to look at them now. So here we have the Sony VAIO Pro 13, and this is the Sony VAIO Duo 13. Both are brand new. Just came out in July of 2013, and they're one of the few Haswell Ultrabooks on the market right now. Of course, by the end of 2013, there'll be a lot more competition, but for right now, Sony really is out the gate first with Haswells. Acer has just come out with the Aspire S7 refresh that has Haswell inside, and that would compete with your Duo, with your Pro 13 rather, more so than this guy here, which is the Duo 13. So, what do they have in common? First off, they're both available with Intel Core i5 and i7 ULV Haswell CPUs. You can get them with 4 or 8 gigs of RAM. In either case, the memory is soldered to the motherboard on these guys. You can't open them up and pop in a DIMM after the fact. They both have SSD storage. The Sony VAIO Pro in the US uses the new PCIe interface. It's a bit faster than the mSATA interface used on the Duo 13. In practical terms, you're not going to feel the difference between the two in terms of storage speed, but you know, for feeds and speeds and people who just love the latest, greatest stuff, PCIe certainly is attractive, and I'm sure we'll come up with things that really demand even more of disk storage soon. But on Ultrabooks, typically where we don't do a lot of serious professional HD video processing all the time, things that are very demanding of the disk, I'd say it's not so important in the end for the buyer. Obviously, they're both 13-inch machines, and they both use carbon fiber with some magnesium alloy in construction. The 13-inch tablet is actually the one that's a little bit heavier. That slider mechanism adds some weight, 2.87 pounds. With the Pro 13, you're talking under 2.5 pounds. It's one of the lightest 13-inch Ultrabooks on the market, thanks to that carbon fiber, which is light. It means a little bit of flex. That's by design. Carbon fiber is meant to flex rather than break. So I'm not going to harp on that, but I know some people just can't stand anything that flexes whatsoever. Something to consider there, whereas our Duo 13 is a significantly more rigid feeling. You can't really twist it at all. Now this guy, when it's closed, you can't twist it. When you open it, you can twist the panel a little bit here. You can press underneath and actually actuate the trackpad a little bit. So for those of you who are really bummed by that kind of thing, there's a lot more stuff here basically. So if we open this guy up, you can see we have this panel right here. It is thin, but it's still thicker. Bigger battery inside also adds to the heft and to the rigidity of it. So a difference in the design there. When we're speaking of design, now we're looking at what's different about it. This guy pops up, and what is it? It is a convertible slider tablet. So the difference really is, for those of you who just want to use something that's just like a traditional notebook, you just want to sit there and type and be able to move your screen back and forth as you see fit, given whatever range you're offered by the hinge. Well, the Pro 13 would be for you. For those of you who are interested in the new convertible form factors and how they might make the touchscreen more enjoyable, read on. Also for those of you who are note takers and artists in this case too. So with this guy, as you can see, the angle is fixed. Some people will be bothered by this, some won't. I find that this is the angle I almost always want to use it at, even when I'm drawing sometimes, because it's kind of like using a drafting table or an easel, and it's just pretty darn comfortable. But it is fixed like that. Obviously you can also use it flat, like so. So for those of you who want something that kind of works like a tablet, like an iPad, only bigger and heavier, because this guy is, again, 2.86 pounds and 13.3 inches. There it is. But if you're going to watch a movie, you just want to prop this up in a tablet stand or put it in your lap, really nice and really versatile. Another important thing about the touchscreen usability is, well, obviously when it's flat, there's not going to be any motion whatsoever. You can tap on this, nothing is going to move. So you don't have that bobble thing happening. Likewise with Sony's hinge design on the 13-inch model, they did a very good job. It actually latches into little feet down here. And again, you can watch our full video review to see that in greater detail, but there is no movement. So when you touch the screen, awesome. No bobbling, and I'll show you that on the Pro 13 in a minute to see the difference. Also, this angle is more touch-friendly. It's easier to use a touchscreen than when it's more upright. Also, because this brings the screen a little bit closer to you, you're more inclined to actually reach out and touch the screen. You're not reaching as far back. So again, really set up to use touch more aggressively and to be more ergonomic for doing it. Now let's look at the Pro 13. So here we have our Pro 13. Now, you obviously can move this to whatever angle suits you. This doesn't go really far back, though. And actually, because I do like to use it tilted back more, I can't go as far back as I can with our Duo 13, which is kind of a bummer for me. If you're using it lower down, like on your lap or something, you're going to want it angled up at you without having to, tilt it, that kind of thing. So there's a difference there. Also, even though this is a pretty good stiff hinge, they did a nice job. In fact, it's hard to open this with just one hand if you're lifting up the display. There's always going to be some movement. So see, when you touch the screen, sometimes it's going to have bounce to it. That's just inherent to all notebooks with touch screens right now. Makes it sometimes a little bit more annoying, especially when it's a tiny touch target and you got to be like kind of precise already, and then the thing bobbles away on you. What's the benefit, though? You get a good keyboard. You get a better keyboard, in fact, than on the Duo 13. Duo 13 is not horrible. It's not like the Duo 11, which was not the most pleasant keyboard, but there is more travel here and more tactile feel. The backlight is also perfectly even, which is just lovely. Duo 13, it's not very even. If you're somebody who makes your living writing like I do, for example, this is a really pleasant keyboard to use. There's just nothing I'm going to complain about too much here with this keyboard. Nice. Good key travel. Now we compare this to the Duo 13. And this is a pretty roomy sized keyboard right here too. You can see we're not talking super shrunk down. It is, however, moved forward, and we have just this very abbreviated wrist rest area here, which may be less ergonomic for people who, well, spend a whole lot of time typing. You want to put your hand somewhere, so you're probably going to be resting it in front of this area. It really depends on how you use it. So, ergonomically speaking, better keyboard. Ergonomically speaking, better tablet and touchscreen experience. Which is more important to you? You decide. Here we get a full-size Synaptics trackpad, large, roomy, and some people have complained about the trackpad. I have no problems with it. There are driver settings. You can go in and adjust your mouse properties for the trackpad. Do that. You can actually fix a whole lot of what you might find annoying, especially the fact that it has a over-aggressive tendency to want to do palm rejection. So when you're typing, if it knows you're hitting the keyboard, it ignores the whole outer area of the trackpad. Really a pain. You can stop that from happening. Here we have a Synaptics trackpad, but it's a half-height trackpad. So, it works pretty well, and anything going side to side is going to be pretty easy, but up, down, pinch, zooming, you don't have much room for that there, but it's way better than the pointer stick that was on the Duo 11, that's for sure, and it is usable, but it's not that big full experience. For those of you who use a Bluetooth mouse anyway and say, I don't care, well, there you go. You don't have to care. Now, how about displays? In either case, you're looking at Sony's full HD 1920 by 1080 triluminous IPS display with wide viewing angles and beautiful colors. It's the same panel, and we've got the same color rating and brightness on both of these, give or take a few points on the brightness, which panels will vary by about 10 points from one to another. For both of these, you're looking at sRGB around 95-96% and Adobe RGB of 72 to 73%, which is very good, better than most laptop displays on the market. Colors are stunning. Colors are rich on both of these. Each of them, they make movies look really, really beautiful. Photographs are just great. Text is very sharp and very clear. And for brightness, neither of them is super duper bright. They're not at the top of the class for brightness. We're measuring them between 250 and 265 nits of brightness, more than adequate for indoor work, not so great for outdoor work. Our US models are available only with touchscreens for the Pro. Obviously, for the Duo, it's going to be a touchscreen since that's a tablet. So you can only get touch, and that means gloss display on both of these. Now, as gloss displays go, they are not really super duper glary. I have seen much worse. However, they are gloss. Now, overseas, you might be able to get the Pro in a matte display without touch, but here in the US, we don't have that as an option. With this guy here, you've got multi-touch capacitive display only. It does not work with digital pens. Very important thing here with the Duo 13, works with multi-touch and also with the included pen, which is an N-Trig digital pen. So very accurate, very precise. Again, watch our video review and read our written review to know all about that, but this is great for note-taking and to a certain extent for art. We need to see pressure sensitivity in even more applications before this becomes an artist's dream product. But if you want to actually just sometimes use something as a tablet, you need to draw diagrams, you write equations, whatever it is. You've got the whole natural ergonomic thing going right here with this pen. Precise, not nasty at all. Now, even with the Pro, if you wanted to use a capacitive stylus, like the ones that are available for an iPad, which is really not a good experience at all, generally speaking, for writing, this is not an ergonomic way to do things. You really do want something that opens as a tablet, so it depends on what you want, what you need, again. Now, in terms of horsepower and performance, as I said, both of these are available with Core i5 and i7 Haswell CPUs, the same 4500U and 4200U with Intel HD 4400 graphics. The Duo 13 has a nifty option. It's the Intel Core i7 4650U with Intel HD 5000 graphics for an additional performance boost. So far, we're not seeing that option available in the Pro. I suspect that the design focus here was really being compact, and there's just not room for a lot of thermal dissipation to deal with the added heat of a faster GPU. So I don't think it's going to be an option anytime soon on the Pro if you're looking for that really, the most you can get out of a Haswell CPU these days. In terms of performance, you can see we have our experience index here. Now, this is a Core i5, our particular Pro 13, and this is a Core i7 with the 4400, not the top of the line i7. So you're going to see a little bit of variation in terms of CPU speed. As expected, the disk benchmarks are going to be a bit better on the one with the PCIe graphics, that is the Pro line machine. And we're seeing a bit better performance on memory on the Duo 13 because that one's running with dual channel RAM. That's because that one has 8 gigs of RAM. I believe, but I'm not sure, still trying to get information on that also the 4 gig model will have dual channel RAM. So you get a little bit better performance, boosts the integrated graphics. Now in real world performance, playing some 3D games like my favorite Civ 5 game, and even just running synthetic benchmarks like 3D Mark, the VAIO Duo 13 pulls significantly ahead. You're talking about 550 on 3D Mark 11 versus 1050 on the Duo 13. That's a very wide difference there, considering the fact that they're running on the same integrated GPU. And I have to say, in part, it could be, yes, it has dual channel memory, and the other part is that there's a lot more room for being thermally aggressive in the Duo 13. For Sony, that's actually a lot of room to work with there, that little thin Duo 13, versus the Pro, where they really can't push the system without worrying about having it run too hot. Also, on the Duo 13, they're using the neat thermal capabilities of the new Haswell CPUs. Also, that feature was available on Ivy Bridge, but anyway, they can go up from the normal 17 watt max ceiling to 25 watts if you happen to be plugged in, assuming that there's adequate cooling going on. So you're going to get a bit better performance out of the Duo 13, actually. Not that it's twice as fast. You're not talking something like, well, we're comparing an Alienware to your average Ultrabook or something like that, but it can be noticeable. For example, Civ plays at about 5 frames higher, which is, well, just enough to make it really much more enjoyable, I would say. And I find multitasking a little bit smoother, too. When plugged in, particularly there, because that's when you're going to get that extra advantage. How about ports? You're looking at about the same thing on each of these things. 2 USB 3.0 ports, one with charging, full-size HDMI, SD memory stick, MMC card slot there. The card does not stick out of the chassis on either of these, and our headphone jack, and of course charging. Now everything is on the back on the Duo 13. Great for people who like everything tidy and they use it at their desk and hate it when the mouse cord bumps into their hand or something like that. But you got to look around the back of the machine when you want to plug things in. And if you're using it like a tablet, well, all the ports are up top, so you got wires sticking out the top end. Kind of look like a little Martian there. Now on our Pro 13, more normal arrangement, we got ports on the sides here. On this side, just the charging port. On the other side, there's everything else. This is on the right side. Might be particularly annoying to you right-handed people who are plugging in the mouse because the cord is going to be right where your hand is. But again, 2 USB 3.0 ports, one supports charging, your combo headphone jack, SD card slot right there, and full-size HDMI port. So you're not gaining or losing anything with these in terms of ports. They both have the same stuff. In terms of heat and thermal design, as you can see, we've got our exhaust vent here. We have air intake vents along the back where the display is. There have been some people complaining about the heat on the Pro line. Now, I think the 11 tends to run even hotter because there's less room for heat sinks, thermal dissipation, that kind of thing, versus the 13. Ours is generally quiet, whether I'm using this for Photoshop, working on Office, or streaming HD video from Netflix and Amazon. I haven't had any problems. Now when I plug it in, the fan is loud. It's pretty aggressive, but that's because it kicks the power management up and lets you run at full speed more. So there it is, which is the way I would prefer it, to be honest. When I plug it in, I want it to give me everything it possibly can in terms of computing performance. Both of these do have settings. You can choose different power and noise level modes using the VAIO control panel on there. And as I said, our particular unit has not been a noisy guy when it's unplugged. Now in our Duo 13, we have ventilation over here, and we have ventilation here. We have air intake vents. Also, So more ventilation, a little bit more room for it. This thing is uncanny. It is so darn quiet. It's creepy. I tell you, I turned it on, and usually when you out of the box, you take one of these and you set them up, and they're doing all sorts of Windows updates, that kind of thing, and they howl for about the first day. This one didn't do that. This one just hardly ever makes noise. I have to do something like play Civ or Left 4 Dead or something like that to really get it to get noisy most of the time. So really, if silence is your thing, this is your guy. Neither of them gets violently hot, but both of them, you can feel where the CPU is on the underside. If you're doing something like trying to output some HD video, you'll feel one hot spot. But generally, it's comfortable enough to keep on your legs, although with all ultra low voltage notebooks these days that are very thin, especially if they have some metal or even carbon fiber that transfers heat, it's better for them as well as if you put something between you and it, even if it's just a magazine. When it comes to battery life, significantly larger battery in here, over 6,000 milliamps of battery versus the upper 4,000s for the Pro 13. There's a bit more room for it here, and I think because Sony caught so much flack for the Duo 11 and its mediocre battery life around 4.5 hours, they said, well, we're going to go to town between the optimizations of Haswell for power and the fact that we've so increased the size of the battery in here. This is one of the really long-running guys on the market right now. This he goes for about 9 hours with moderate use, and that includes an hour of watching Netflix movies, things like that, not just sitting there quietly typing. And that's with brightness set at about 65 to 70%, which is where I like it, and Wi-Fi on and active. Gone is the sheet battery option for this guy. There used to be a clip-on battery for the Duo 11. Nothing here, but I think it's because Sony figured if you can get 9 hours, maybe even 10 if you're being aggressive with your power management and setting your display brightness down, then it's probably enough for most people. Smaller battery in here, but you still get very good 6-hour battery life, considering the fact that this thing is less than 2.5 pounds. Again, one of the lightest, thinnest Ultrabooks on the market. It's the decision that you make. Do you really want the most portability, the lightest possible thing you can carry, or do you want a lot of battery life? And because battery life is 6 hours, and Sony knows some people want more, you can get a clip-on sheet battery, which is sort of like a wedge battery. It's a slightly weird thing. It's actually elevated a little bit near the back to allow for some heat to dissipate from the bottom on it. But for $149, you can get that and double your run times and actually get up to 12 hours with this guy. With both of these guys, you get your standard webcam on the front. The one on the Duo 13 is a little bit better than the Pro in terms of detail that it manages to capture, but they're both pretty usable. But the Duo 13, since it's a tablet, I feel compelled to give you a camera on the back, which is slightly oddly placed right over here. It's an 8-megapixel camera. It happens to be surprisingly good, particularly with good light, because as you see, there's no flash over here, so you need some good lighting. But it actually can take some really nice pictures. So if that appeals to you and you don't mind waving this 13-inch tablet around just to capture those shots, it is a possibility. They both have NFC. NFC is located right here. See the symbol? About impossible to use, even if you're a coordinated person, because you have to actually touch things together. So I was trying to do it with my Samsung Galaxy S4 and touch them together, transfer a file, and then I had to interact with one of the screens on the receiving end. And between holding the nearly 3-pound tablet and the phone and clicking on the screen, well, you just don't want to go there. Not much fun. On our brilliant VAIO Pro, however, where did they put NFC? They put it someplace that you're actually used to interacting with. It's in the trackpad area. Whew, easy to use. Good times. Nice that. Lastly, there's pricing. The VAIO Pro 13 starts at $1249, and that gets you the Core i5 4200U, 4 gigs of RAM, and 128 gig SSD. And the Duo 13 starts at $1399, $150 more for the i5, 4 gigs of RAM again, and 128 gigs of storage. So you're paying $150 extra for the active digitizer, the N-Trig digitizer with digital pen there, the 8-megapixel camera on the back, and I suppose you could say you're paying more for that bigger battery too. So a little bit of a price premium there, but not a huge one. If you actually find the convertible form factor useful, or you're a note taker, you like that digital pen, it's obviously worth the $150 extra it's going to cost you. It's not a huge difference between the two machines. In the end, let's face it, if you're a Sony person or you just like these, you want a Haswell right now, either way, Sony's going to be happy, whichever one you pick. And they really are both very nice machines in different ways. One last thing I'm going to talk about is the Wi-Fi on these fellas. The Pro comes with 7260 and Intel dual band Wi-Fi. That's new for the Haswell chip. And at first, it was a problem out of the box. It kept dropping connections. And Sony came up with a driver update. Intel had an intermediary one that helped, but Sony seems to really make it work so that it connects reliably. What I've found so far is that it has better connection speeds, that is, the actual throughput is better, but its range is not as good as the Duo 13. VAIO Duo 13 has Broadcom dual band 802.11 Wi-Fi. Again, throughput speeds are not as fast as with the VAIO Pro, but it can connect to access points that are farther away with a weaker signal. So it really depends on what you need. Do you travel a lot where you have metsa signals, or do you usually have pretty good service and you just want the fastest throughput that you can possibly get? In either case, both of these supports Intel WiDi wireless display. That's kind of unusual. You don't usually see Broadcom with WiDi support because that's an Intel thing, WiDi, but indeed you get it on the Duo 13 as well as the Pro 13. So there you have it, the Sony VAIO Duo 13 right here for you pen types and those who find the convertible form factor more comfortable, more interesting, more useful. And here we have the classic notebook form factor, still with the touchscreen on the Sony VAIO Pro 13. So you can see that really it's up to how you want to use this more than anything else. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to watch our video reviews of each of these products, read our written reviews, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.